Hello, I'm Abigail DeJarnett.
My name is Allison Lind.
I'm your host, Grant May.
My name's Noelle Fitchett.
And welcome
back
to the Counteract Podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Counteract Podcast. I feel like it's been so long since we've talked. I kind of miss you guys. I think it's been about a month since my last upload. Well, I uploaded an interview with Abby and Allie, I think right before the conference, but that was recorded in advance. So I have not been talking to you guys for like a month, and I'm so sorry about that. We had crazy times leading up to the conference. If you listen to Abby's most recent episode, you will know that it was an amazing conference. Like, God moved in so many amazing ways, huge success, but we did meet a lot of trials leading up to it, as it tends to happen when we're, doing work for the kingdom. There's spiritual warfare. So on my end, it's been a rough season. Post-grad is a rough season, and maybe I'll make a longer episode talking about all of that. Some of the themes that Abby talked about in her previous episode about just Christian suffering, I feel like God has been making very known to me this year. And it's very formative, very important, but also very hard to walk through. And so that made it a little hard to do the podcast leading up to the conference. Especially just with work right now. Working in ministry is hard. We'll talk about that another time. But today I'm just coming to you guys with some fun little Q&A questions. I got on Instagram and I asked people to ask me questions, and I think this is just a nice way to ease right back into our regular posting schedule and, get reacquainted with you guys because it's been so long. So yeah, I'll just be answering some fun questions today. But before we do that, I have to tell you about our amazing sponsors, Patriot Mobile. You know them, you love them. They are the reason that our podcast has been able to run and grow so well in the past, I think it's been 8 months since we started this podcast. They also were a huge contributor to the conference, and we just love them. And I really think it is in your best interest to switch to them because they don't support the companies that you don't want to support. They put the cause ahead of their profits. Every other wireless provider in the country sends money to the abortion lobby, to different left-leaning causes that you as a Christian probably don't want to give money to. But Patriot Mobile is actually here to save you from that. They offer dependable nationwide coverage, giving you access to all 3 major networks, so you can get the same coverage you're accustomed to, but you don't have to fund these causes that you disagree with. Let me switch my teleprompter or whatever. When you switch, you support the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, and our military veterans and first responder heroes. Their customer service team is 100% US based, so they make switching super easy. You can keep your number, your upgrade, your phone, all of it, and they'll help you find a plan to best fit your needs. All you have to do is go to patriotmobile.com/counteract or call 972-PATRIOT. If you use the code Counteract USA, you will get free activation. Once again, that is patriotmobile.com/counteract or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. We are so proud to be sponsored by Patriot Mobile. All right, guys, let's just get straight into this. These questions are all over the place. So we're gonna have a little fun with it. First question is dream guest on the podcast. All I'm thinking of is JoJo Siwa right now. Okay, dream guest on the podcast. Actually, he's gonna be on the podcast soon. Is that a spoiler? Not on my podcast, but we had all of the speakers from the conference do a mini podcast episode with us backstage. And so Abby got to interview Victor Marks. He is one of my dream guests. I just want to sit down and talk with him. Him and David Eubank. They're both high-risk missionaries. If you've heard of the Free Burma Rangers or All Things Possible Ministries, they are the men behind those organizations. They're high-risk missionaries, and they are also just very strong and tender men of God. They run their families so well, and I would love to sit down with either of them. And honestly, they always tell their testimonies, and they talk about what it's like to do the ministry that they do. But I would love to hear how they navigate marriage, how they navigate parenthood. What has God been speaking to them lately? I would love to have a really personal conversation with them. Literally like a coffee conversation, you know? So those are my dream guests on the podcast. So I just lost my phone. Okay, question number 2. What has the Lord been teaching you post-grad? So, like I mentioned, I will do a longer episode about all of this, but honestly, he has been teaching me what it means to suffer as a Christian. And it's not the suffering of like terrible things are happening to me, but the suffering of learning to take your cross up daily and what that actually means. I feel like in this time, God has really been testing, maybe not testing. I don't believe God tests us in that way, but I think he's been asking me the question, like, am I really enough for you? And my in light of that, my obedience is being tested. Working in ministry, the ministry that I'm at is really hard. And I've actually really struggled with like whether or not God actually called me to it. I really truly believe he called me to work in this ministry and to like, I've just been so passionate about like the pro-life cause for so long. And I believe that's like something he placed in my heart. But working in ministry is hard because it's not a church, it's an organization. And to navigate that with the Christian life, and just like this idea of like having a job, but also like laying yourself down for that, there's just a lot of like, oh, it's very deep and I can't take too long to get into it. But yeah, he's been teaching me like what it means to take up your cross. And I've been reading Cost of Discipleship by Bonhoeffer, and he talks a lot about this idea of costly grace, that we have earned grace at a cost, right? Like Jesus gives us grace, but the cost was his life. But in turn, we as Christians must accept that grace with a cost, meaning when Jesus calls us, he bids us to come and die. And what does it mean to die to yourself every day, to carry your cross? Like your cross, the cross is heavy. Like it's not just this like, carrying my cross, I'm going to sip my Dunkin' Ice latte and go to church and go to brunch and be super comfortable with where I'm at in life. But it's like, actually, like I have committed myself to a life of dying to myself every day. I feel like I was faced with the reality of being a Christian this summer, which the reality is that I have devoted myself to suffering for the rest of my life, essentially. Sure, we will have these good seasons and we have this eternal joy. And that's what's so beautiful about Christ, is that we are given an eternal joy that surpasses all circumstances. It's what Paul writes about in prison, that we have this like hope in Jesus that can't be taken away by circumstances. But at the same time, it's not like it's actually in no way promised to us that we're going to live a mostly joyful life. If you look at the early church and the disciples, like they were all killed for their faith. And Paul was in prison. I think Timothy was put in prison. There were people like they were suffering for the gospel, but they couldn't walk away from it. They couldn't deny it because they knew it to be true. And that's essentially what we've committed ourselves to as Christians. And I feel like I was faced with that this summer. And honestly, for a minute, I was like, I don't want to do it, God. Like, I wish I could turn back. I wish I could not be a Christian. But then I remember like, I can't though, like, because I know the person who created me. I know the lover of my soul, and I know what he says is true. I know his character is good, and I love him too much to turn away and to deny him. And I fear God. I truly fear God. And I know that where he has me is the best and safest place I can be, even though it really sucks and it's not normal and it's lonely. I mean, I feel lonely in the church sometimes, which I never thought would happen. Like, I feel like I got a really good church community this year. And then I also felt like it was kind of taken away from me, not by any like bad terms or anything, but just simply because of my job and the nature of the work that I do. It's like I had community and now I don't like have a strong community. I have my inner circle, but I think God was teaching me like, I'm not the community. Like, I am God. I am the personal like savior of your soul. And we're in this is a B relationship, you know? And I've just been learning that like following him sometimes is really lonely and it's hard and there's suffering. And Bonhoeffer even like in his there's like a little autobiography snippet, not autobiography, just a biography, like an overview of Cost of Discipleship and just an overview of his life. And I realized like Bonhoeffer was alone, not only in German society, you know, under the Third Reich, but also alone in the church because he felt so convicted for the church and was interceding and saying, guys, we've gotten it wrong. Like we have chosen cheap grace as Christ's hands and feet. Like we've chosen cheap grace. And now we have this like Christian society at the cost of true discipleship. And so the path that Bonhoeffer walked was lonely and he walked it to the end. And yeah, I don't know, just coming to terms with that is like, it's been really hard, but really formative. And it's the first time where I've had to really be like, is Jesus enough for me? Like truly enough, not like I have Jesus and I have this thing. Like I have Jesus and I have parkour, or I have Jesus and I have theater. But what if I don't have any of those things? Is he enough for me? And that's really what he's been teaching me post grad, just facing, you know, the rest of my life essentially. So yeah, I'm going to make a longer episode about that, but that's my sort of short-ish answer to that question. The next question, speaking of parkour, is what made me want to get into parkour? I honestly couldn't tell you. I discovered it on YouTube when I was like 12, and I was a super like nerdy kid. I read comic books and watched action movies, and to this day, those are like, I still love action, and I'm realizing in hindsight, actually, I don't remember who said this, but someone said like, it's the cry for justice that we all have like in us that's why I connect with like action type of like superhero movies, was like this cry for justice. And so as a kid, I found parkour through that. Just like, I don't know, there's like those like YouTube chase POV videos where it's like super, like, I don't know, like super nerdy, silly, but they use parkour. And I kind of like discovered the sport through that. And I actually really wanted to learn it when I was like 12, but I lived in Arkansas and I was already the black sheep at church. And I just didn't want to like ostracize myself more. So I didn't learn it. And I gave up on that. I was like, it's not a realistic dream. Like I have to, you know, have a career or whatever. So I choose an equally unrealistic dream of theater. But yeah, I kind of gave up on it. And then I did get into circus arts. And when I moved to New York, I had just gone through this long audition process for college. If you go back and listen to my testimony episode, that has a lot to do with my testimony. And I was coming off of this like deep rejection from Marymount, but I was still attending Marymount. And so kind of feeling that kind of rejection of like, okay, well, they don't want me. Then like the musical theater world doesn't want me. So I'm going to do like circus arts. And I actually really discovered that I have such a deep passion for movement and athleticism. And like, yes, I love the arts, but I love the discipline of athletics. Like I'm an athlete. I think I was an athlete before I was ever an artist, but I love the arts because they can actually utilize athleticism. So I was discovering all of this like my freshman year of college, and I was doing circus arts. And I actually for a minute thought like I might join the circus someday. It's still in the cards, guys. I just haven't done circus arts since I started parkour. But I went to this gym called Brooklyn Zoo, and I made a lot of really good friends there who did parkour. They did all kinds of things, because the bottom floor was like tramp wall. There's a little dance floor, like the breaking community goes there. And then there's like a spring floor for the tricking community. And then on the second floor is the parkour gym. So I just made friends from all different backgrounds, people in stunts, people who do breakdancing. I mean, really cool like connections. And one day I was having a really bad session on my aerial hoop. And I was just like, I don't want to do this right now. Like, I don't want to be here. And my friends were like, well, why don't you try parkour with us? Like, I'll teach you some moves. And I was like, you know what? Sure. And then they taught me, and I felt so, like, I just felt so strong. I felt like I don't know, like, how to word it, but I felt like it because I don't want to sound like woo-woo spiritual when I say this, but I felt like I understood myself better after trying parkour. I felt like I kind of come to like a home base as far as movement goes, because parkour is like a very primal movement. It's actually like within all of us, which once again sounds really woo-woo spiritual, but it's literally just the practice of well, what the French call, actually the founders of the sport, they call be strong to be useful. um I'm gonna butcher it in French, but it's literally être pour être utile, be strong to be useful. So it's this idea that we all have a way of navigating our environment and our circumstances, and how do we do that in the most like efficient, safe way possible. But there's this other side of the sport that's about creativity. What can I do with one wall that's like creative, that's fun? Like what does my body like naturally create out of this? And I just really connected with it, and I felt strong, and I just felt like I'd like reconnected with my like athletic side that I had growing up and kind of put on the back burner for the sake of theater. And so, yeah, I just never looked back after that. I just loved it, and I love the community. I mean, it's just such a lovely, I mean, they need Jesus, but I just love like it's such a small sport. I know everyone like around the world. Like I could go to not most, but like any European country probably and find some parkour athlete that I could stay with. And then suddenly after a week of like training together and working through challenges together, we've become really good friends. And I feel like that has like broadened my understanding of like, I don't know, just like how far God's love and grace reaches, because these people are typically on like the outskirts of society. And I feel like, so through parkour, the reason I've stuck with it is like because I love the sport, I love the creativity, I love challenging myself, but also because truly because of the community and just how deeply I love them, and how I think God helped me realize like I feel called to the people on the outskirts, like the areas that people truly aren't going to like go into, especially in our modern Western Christianity that's like, oh, don't associate yourself with the dirty people because then you'll be dirty. Like there's this complete twisted view of the gospel. When really Jesus would be there like enjoying, you know, as long as it's not sinful, he would be like enjoying the things that they love and being there with them and like fellowshipping with them. And that's like, I don't know, Jesus like really helped me understand like what he was calling me to, and also just helped me understand like more of who he was through it. And so it's been really cool. And yeah, that's how I got into it. I didn't like, there wasn't anything specific that made me want to get into it. I just tried it one day and felt like my eyes were opened or whatever. So yeah. Next question. What are my thoughts on astrology? I didn't research before this episode, so I'm probably not going to give the most like scriptural factual basis for this, but my baseline view is that astrology is the worship of the stars, but God is the creator of the stars. And so my thoughts on astrology are, especially as a Christian, like you can't believe in astrology and Jesus, because one is worshiping the creation and the other is worshiping the creator. I believe in worshiping the creator. Sure, maybe in astrology there is, I don't know, like I feel like what are they called when you get like your reading? No, not tarot, like your daily like this, you know what I mean? It's like your daily like devotional, but it's not a devotional. It's like, sorry, I'm getting help from my guy in the chair. Horoscope. Okay. So, yeah. The horoscopes I feel like are really broad, and it's like you read it and you're like, "Oh yeah, that connects to some part of me." I feel like I could read any of the horoscopes and connect to them in some way. And so first of all, I believe they're really broad, but also I believe that they like box us in to actually like the true like nature of who we're created to be. Um and I don't know, just living your life by a horoscope, I think maybe there is some truth that you find in it, but I believe that truth actually comes from the creator of the stars. That is a like the time, the day, the year, the place that we're born in all has an effect into like who we grow up to be. But that doesn't negate from like the fact that Jesus very intentionally placed us in that time with that constellation, like, I don't know, that rising moon or whatever. I just believe that Jesus holds all of the truth, and maybe some of that truth is reflected through his creation because all of creation sings his praise. But we should not follow astrology to find meaning in astrology, because the true creator and definer of our meaning is Jesus Christ, the creator of the stars, the heavens, and the earth. And I believe that he has the ultimate say in who we are and what we do with our life. And you can consult your horoscope to say like, how am I feeling today? Or like, I don't know, like, let me like, actually, I think it'd be really fun to find out what my horoscope is right now. Do this in real time. Daily horoscope. For today, I am a Gemini. And today is October 3rd. It may seem like everyone around you is happy and getting what they want while you're stuck in the trenches. Don't compare yourself to other people and make judgments based on outside appearances. The truth of the matter is that they're most likely only looking for the immediate future and experiencing short-term pleasures. You, however, have your sights set on long-term and will probably be much better off. Okay, like from what I just talked to you guys about suffering and having eternal hope, like this kind of rings true. However, I know this because I know Jesus Christ, the eternal Savior and Redeemer of the earth. And I could look at this and like use this as guidance, or I could go to the actual Creator and say, like, hey, Jesus, like, what do you want to say to me today? What do you want me to do today? Where are you calling me? And I think it's so much more broad than this. What if, recently I was in prayer, praying about these kinds of things, like, why am I in the trenches right now? Blah, blah, blah. And he actually, in this like prayer session, was like, actually, we're going to table this today and we're not even going to touch it. And I actually want to call, he was like uprooting this like generational family, like healing thing in me. And it had nothing to do with this season that I'm in. And so I believe that it is just such a more broad calling than what a daily horoscope or astrology could give you. I also believe like historically, like it is kind of in the vein of like witchcraft, and not to be like witch, but I mean, witchcraft is literally anything that uses like creation or like the natural world to do spiritual practices. And so, yeah, that's probably not a well thought out answer. Maybe it'd be cool to do an episode on this sometime as well. But I just believe that we should worship the Creator because he actually knows us and loves us deeply, and knows every part of ourselves, not just the like, Gemini, Taurus rising or whatever. He knows like the deepest, innermost works within us, things that we don't even know about ourselves. And they don't belong in a box. We're very broad, expansive. I mean, we go through a whole range. I feel like I'm like 5 different people depending on the day. Like sometimes I want to be girly and cute and I'm really happy. Sometimes I'm the opposite. I want to wear like sweatpants and I'm having a bad day and I want to buy a van and be a surfer and live on the beach. And then the next day I'm like, oh yeah, but God called me to pro-life ministry and I should do his calling. So yeah, I just believe following the Creator because he walks personally with you. He walks closely with you and he loves you and he created you, and he's going to give you true meaning and rest and joy and everything that we think we're getting through astrology, but it's actually from the Creator of the universe. And creation just sings his praise, and we're not called to worship his creation. We're called to sing the praise of the Creator. That's my kind of jumbled view on astrology. Okay, moving on. Oh brother, I haven't researched this one either. Can someone be pro-life and also support the death penalty? So, like the short, obvious answer is like yes, you can have any belief and support another thing, even if they're in contradiction to themselves. It's like, I mean, so technically, yes. Should we as Christians? That's the question. And I've talked to a few friends about this lately because the friend who asked this, she works with me, and we had this pastor come up to us at a tabling event recently and basically was like, I'm hesitant to support pro-life organizations because sometimes they also support the death penalty. Which, first of all, I am like, that is the cowardice of the Western church, because, and that is why so many people, like, that's why the church has stood back on so many of these issues, because they're like, well, they might not actually be like doing what they say they're doing. It's like, no, like, death and life is a very black and white issue. So anyway, that was like a whole thing. Like, I disagree with like his practice in general. And it's people like him and churches like him that actually make it so hard for pro-life organizations to run, and housing ministries in general to run, because they want to shy away from like the hard black and white. They want to live in the nuance. And it's like, it really doesn't matter what we support. In fact, me and all of my coworkers may disagree on every other socio-political issue, but we all agree that the best option a mother can choose is life for her child and life for herself. And that's what we're committed to doing. That's our mission. It doesn't matter what else we believe. However, if you want to make this argument, how can you be pro-life and support the death penalty? Here's my thoughts on it. The Old Testament does tell us that sin is punishable by death. We're supposed to have, at least by Old Testament law, eye for an eye, blood for blood, life for life. And so the act of murder, for example, is punishable by death. This is all off the top of my head, but I believe like certain acts of like sexual immorality are punishable by death. So it's very clear that like the wages of sin are death, and by Old Testament law, the best thing that they could do for their society at that time was like put it to death. And so that's a very real thing. And I think that's partially where our death penalty came from. I also know the more practical standpoint on the death penalty is that if you give someone life in prison, like, we only have so many resources, and we can't, like, keeping someone for life in prison, like, is a lot of resources. And maybe that's a commentary on how we run our, like, overall like prison system. That like, okay, are we really incarcerating people that need to be like incarcerated? Or I don't know, I haven't done the research to know fully like where there's corruption, where there's not, if there's even corruption. But I do understand the argument that it costs a lot of resources to keep someone in life in prison. And they're both in some sense a death sentence, right? Because you're never going to go back to your old life. However, the Christian side of me, I guess, or the side that knows Jesus, knows that he died on the cross to actually to justify the sinner, and to give us a chance at abundant eternal life with him. And so there's the other part of me that's like, it's not for us to say who lives and who dies. Like, that's not the law anymore. The law is, we're on like a spiritual plane now, meaning you either are dead in sin or you're alive in Christ. And I don't know if it's for us to say, especially as Christians, who should die and who should live. And that's why I'm pro-life. That's actually like, we're playing God by supporting abortion. I don't believe it is for us to say who deserves to live, who deserves to die. That's my pro-life view. And I could see how that also like carries over into death penalty. Because if it takes life in jail for that person to know Christ, then I want that. And I would say every amount of resources is worth spending for that person to know Christ. Now, is that practically, do they get the resources they need for that? I do know there's a lot of prison ministries. I don't know the statistics. So like I said, I should research this better. But yeah, so I'm on the fence. I think in theory, yes, I don't think you have to support, I don't think you have to be against the death penalty to support pro-life causes, because one, a baby being aborted is an innocent life, but someone on death row is not innocent. Like, they have stood before the judge and they've been announced guilty. And the truth is, we're all going to do that someday. We're all going to sit before the judgment seat. Even if it's not in this lifetime, we all answer to the same God, the same judge. who will say, you know, you can live your whole life and never go to jail and be a good person and get before the king. And he says, I never knew you. Or like, in my eyes, you've committed a great offense. And that itself, like, that is the wages of sin. It's death. And so we're all subject to face that. And so I think the short answer to answer the question, you can be pro-life and support the death penalty. Should we? I don't know. I don't know where I stand on it. That was a lot of just verbal processing. Maybe this would be a really fun episode. If you guys want to hear an episode on this, where we get further into this and maybe I have better insight and knowledge, let us know. You can DM us on Instagram or something. So that's that. Do you think Kamala was wearing an earpiece during the debate? Do you think I'm freaking stupid? Of course she was. How do you start parkour in a place where there isn't much of a scene? The friend who commented this actually was like, oh, I didn't realize this was for the Counteract podcast, but I'm still gonna tell you guys because I love parkour. So where there doesn't seem to be much of a parkour scene, there might be one that's actually hidden. Like when I was growing up in Arkansas, there was actually like a group of like 5 guys who were training and who now are very well known in the community. I went to high school with one of them, but we never really talked. We didn't know each other before. And I was like way too afraid to like ever ask them to teach me anything. But they were there and there was like technically a scene, and they're really good athletes today. It's crazy. It's so weird. But here's what I would say. One, the online community is like the way to be connected within parkour is truly to be on Instagram, which sucks sometimes because I'm not a big fan of Instagram. But for the case of like making friends, it's truly like social media really is good for that, for parkour. So I would say like get online, get on Instagram, find people to follow. In fact, okay, I know the person who asked this is in Arkansas. So Northwest Arkansas might not have an official parkour community, but I do know Kansas City has a parkour community and Dallas has a parkour community. So there's areas within like driving distance that you can get connected with those people and start making friends that way. And once you get in the door, kind of, the community is very small. So that's the first thing I would say. There might be people you don't even know about, even if they're not in your city, they're nearby. And it's worth just exploring that first. So, for practical purposes, look up Kansas City parkour and then look up like, I don't know, maybe just look up Dallas parkour. And I feel like there's definitely a community page, but I know for sure there's a Kansas City parkour. And actually the guy who runs it is a Christian. So he's super cool. He's a good friend. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know. I can give you the connections. But the second thing I would say is find a gym. There probably is not a parkour gym in your area, but you can go to a trampoline park, a Ninja Warrior park, even like a CrossFit gym or something. One, to start just getting your skills up, but 2, to meet people there. Sometimes you'll meet like people who, like, I remember when I was home, I went to the trampoline park and there were these 2 guys. They were like the only other 2 adults there. I was like, okay, you guys definitely don't just like come here for fun. I was like, do you guys do parkour by any chance? And one of them was like, I do tricking. And the other guy was like, I used to do parkour and now I just kind of like do stuff for fun. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, would you ever like train? Like if I was in Arkansas, would you want to train sometime? And now like I have 2 friends who would be interested in something like that. So go to those places and meet people who are there, like pushing their skills. You know, a lot of Ninja Warrior people actually take it really seriously, and you can be like, hey, you want to work on like vaults together? So meeting people to actually build up like friendships who are kind of like-minded. This is almost like parallel to Counteract in a way, but like people who kind of have the same like passion for this kind of movement. You can actually like recruit friends to go out and try it with you and learn together. And that's really how you actually build community versus finding it. Also, I mean, this is why I never started parkour in Arkansas. You got to have a lot of humility for a solo session to go out to a spot and practice and like maybe look really goofy. I have done it in Arkansas, but that's after I started and knew what I was doing. And people still were like, what the heck is this girl doing outside the Jones Center? Like I would go to just the community center, or like there's some good churches with good walls. Like you find spots and you practice there. You got to be humble. Like you got to be okay with looking like a weirdo. Even in New York City, I have this struggle. And there's like, people are crazy in New York City. And I still hate training alone because people see me and they're like, what the heck is she doing? So if you're brave enough, solo sesh is the way to work. Even when there's no community, you can do parkour anywhere. Go to jams. You may have to go out of your town, out of state even, to go to a jam. But if you get connected to the online world, like there's Texas Winter Jam is a jam they do every January for the sake of like it's cold everywhere, but in Texas it tends to be warmer. So like this year it's in Houston. If you look up Texas Winter Jam on Instagram, you can like see when they're doing the jam for 2025 and like go to that jam and meet a lot of people there. And so if you're able to travel, they're always on a weekend typically. And yeah, that's a really good way to meet the broader like American or even worldwide community. So that's a good way. And then be consistent and invite friends. Then you're actually the one building the community. So if you have friends who like might be interested, I think I taught like all of the Counteract girls, not all of them, but like the Counteract leadership team. I did a parkour class with them once and was just like, here, let me teach you some stuff. And I've been to the trampoline park with one of them and like, just invite friends. They're probably interested. That's probably something they want to try. And so you just got to be that consistent, like base for building community. So that's how I would say it. I know that's like not Counteract related at all, but if anyone's interested in parkour, I just think it's a really fun pastime. And like, yeah, I'm just very biased towards it. So that's my answer to that. Okay, we're getting at almost 40 minutes, but I only have a few more questions left. So, what do you wish someone had told you when you were younger? Honestly, I wish someone had emphasized like that Jesus is the most important person I could ever follow and the most important decision I could ever make. Like there's so much emphasis put when I was younger on like, especially in the theater world, like making connections and you got to go to this theater camp and you got to go to school and you got to, put yourself out there and do all this work. You got to work to like be loved by them. And I wish someone had just told me that like, it actually doesn't matter what anyone thinks of you. I even had this problem in my youth group. I mean, my youth group, all the girls have blocked me or unfollowed me on Instagram because of my Christian beliefs now. So they were very appearance based. It was like honestly pretty judgmental church culture that I grew up in. And I wish someone had just told me like, just keep your eyes on Jesus and follow him. Like his opinion is the only thing that matters. And he will not withhold any good thing from you. Like if it takes being hated by a community to follow Jesus, he may very well still give you the thing that you love. Like I've experienced this with, oh my gosh, I had examples. Well, like we'll say parkour. Like I had to really like, I'm still in the process of just like surrendering it to him. And sometimes that's like, well, crap, like are people in the community going to hate me? Are like, do I have to quit parkour? And it's like, no, he doesn't put desires in our heart to take them away. He's not a cruel God. But if he's first in your life, he's going to give it to you, even if it's in this roundabout way that you're like, oh, I never expected that. Like the fact that I wanted to do parkour when I was 12, gave up on it. It took all these years of not knowing Jesus and then finally knowing him. And then a year later, I get into parkour. Like I couldn't have planned that for myself, but Jesus doesn't withhold the desires of our heart that he places. So yeah, I think I wish someone had just told me that like it will all work out if you just follow Jesus. Not even that like we don't get everything that we want. But the things that are good, like the things that are best for us and the things that he promises for us, he's going to give them to us. We just have to like keep our eyes on him and not worry about what the rest of the world thinks, not worry about career, not worry about school. And I just wish someone had told me that when I was younger, because I was so afraid to stand out when I was younger. And I tried so hard to fit in that it literally cost me my faith when I was younger. I encountered Jesus for the first time when I was 12. Oddly enough, same time that I wanted to get into parkour and all of that, but encountered him when I was 12. And then because I wanted so badly to be liked by everyone else and not stand out, I quit. I didn't follow him until I was 18 and I gave my life to him. So, yeah, I just wish someone had told me that like literally nothing else matters except Jesus. And it might be scary and you may feel like you're being ostracized or you're losing this thing to follow him. And you might be like, that's the cost of grace, but the reward is so much greater. Yeah, that's what I would say. Who do you look up to? Honestly, I feel like I used to look up to like, I don't know, like people who are more well known, but now I really just look up to my inner community, like the leaders at my church. Our college leader, Keithan, go follow him on Instagram. He's really great. And he speaks a lot and he's just very full of wisdom. I really look up to him. I love the way that he loves Jesus. I look up to our pastor, really all of our pastoral staff, and the way that they just are so determined to like lead the church to be a like compelling body of Christ that's truly on mission. Like they don't want, like they're just, I mean, they are so bought in for Jesus. They don't want, like there's no room in our church for like casual Christianity. And I really look up to them for that. Even just like our like youth, not our youth leaders, but like the student leaders in college group, for example. Like I'm a student leader. We have other student leaders and just like younger people who are like stewarding the community. Like I just look up to them and I love the way that they use their gifts and their strengths and like they love Jesus and they're like willing to serve. And so, yeah, I don't know. I look up to like, honestly, my church community and my inner kind of circle. So that was like a lame answer, but also best answer I could give. Goals for 2025. I'm still in 2023, so I don't really know. I really want to travel a lot, but I don't like, that's like not, it's not like a practical goal. It's not really a self-improvement goal. It's just like something I want to do. I would love to save up, even if it's not in 2025, like I want to save up enough money to spend like multiple months like backpacking and just traveling around and training and like going to different churches and meeting people and I don't know, doing mission trips. Like I just want to like get out there. So that's maybe one goal, to like save up and or travel a lot in 2025. But besides that, just to like know the Lord deeper. I feel like that's always my goal, you know, to have better spiritual discipline, better practice, better just like to know his voice more and follow him deeper. Like another year means another chance to grow more in my walk and know more about who he is. So that's my kind of like, yeah, half-hearted answer. And then lastly, the last question I have is, what is something your mom told you when you were younger that has always stuck with you? So this one, it's kind of like, it's not like, well, okay, here's what she told me, and it truly sticks with me. It's not like this deep emotional answer, but she would always tell me when I would get grouchy that I can choose to have a good time. Like I remember so specifically being at like Disney World with her and being in such a bad mood that day because like Andrew, my brother, was like pushing my buttons and I don't even know what was going on, but I was in a bad mood. And my mom was like, well, sorry, like we're here. I think I didn't want to wait in line. She was like, well, we're here. So you can choose to have a good time or not, because this is what we're doing. And I feel like going into adulthood, that has dramatically changed my life. Not even for myself, but for the way that I like minister to others. Because the truth is, like, we face harsh reality all the time. Like, we do things that we don't want to do. We have to do things that we don't want to do all the time. And if our emotions are dependent on our circumstances, we're going to live pretty miserable lives. But it truly is like all about perspective. And like, I think about it this way now, like I can choose to praise Jesus in the hard times, or I can not and have a really miserable time and waste precious time on earth that Jesus has given me to honor him and build the kingdom. So you can choose to have a good time or not. I even do that a lot at work. Like I say that a lot with the moms at work, because sometimes they just get so wrapped up in, you know, the hard things that are happening to them. And like, it's hard, but I just encourage them. And I'm like, you know what? Like, we can't change what's happening, but we can do the best we can right now to like praise Jesus and choose to find the joy and the happy side of it. Like, yeah, that's what I'll say for that. So that's my Q&A episode, guys. Hope it was fun to listen to. Hope it was insightful. Hope it inspired questions. And I don't know. Let us know what you want to see more of. If any of these questions you want me to expand on in a longer episode, would love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. And you can let us know on Instagram at counteract.usa. Also, would love a good review on the podcast. Your reviews and ratings actually help us grow quicker and get noticed and get sponsorships more, so we can continue bringing you good content that is enriching and nourishing and fun. So that's all. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week. I have no idea what I'm doing for next week's episode, but I'm excited to be back on this roll with you guys. So love ya. God bless. Have a good week. Bye.